What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a look at the 11-game Sunday Week 12 slate on DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. And this is the Thanksgiving Hangover Edition slate. Feels like we get back into it really quickly after the 3-game slate on Thursday, but that's just the nature of the beast here in late November in the NFL season. We have a bunch of injury and roster move situations at the running back position that have opened up some cheap plays. We also have some massive favorites on this slate. So this slate is a little different than some of the other Sunday slates we've recently had. So let's talk through it together. Now, Rachaad White from the Tampa Bay Bucks is going to be our favorite play at the running back position here in Week 12 on Sunday. Just $5,100 here on DraftKings, $6,400 over on FanDuel. Rachaad White will be starting ahead of Leonard Fournette for the Buccaneers. Fournette getting limited practices in with the Bucs this week, but with that hip injury, the Buccaneers went ahead and listed him as doubtful for Sunday's contest against Cleveland. So it does seem like it is going to be all Rachaad White in the backfield for the Buccaneers. They have a couple of other options behind him. They have Keyshawn Vaughn, who has been on the active roster, but they do not like using him. And they have Giovanni Bernard, who has been designated to return from injured reserve, but has not been activated just yet. So keep an eye on that situation. Bernard would mix in probably on third downs and passing situations for the Bucs if activated. But we expect Rachaad White to be the primary tailback for the Buccaneers in a really strong matchup against a Browns defense that ranks dead last in the NFL defending the run, and they're slightly below average defending running backs in the passing game as well. Now, jumping over to the Occupy model for tomorrow's action, sorting by projected ownership at the running back position. See, White is here in the top 3. I like him as the best play out of these 3, just as a pure price play. You see he's the cheapest out of the 3 top running backs by ownership. Number 1 in the model is Jeff Wilson. Raheem Mostert is not going to play for the Miami Dolphins. They are characterizing him as a game-time decision, but he is listed doubtful, so he is also extremely unlikely to play against the Texans on Sunday. The Houston Texans allow 179 rushing yards per game to their opponents. That is by far the most in the entire NFL. Jeff Wilson is the next man up here in this backfield for the Dolphins, who have the highest implied team total on this slate and are favored by a massive 14.5 points, which is a nice segue into talking about our second favorite topic that we begin every show with: which teams are the biggest favorites, and therefore which running backs are in the best anticipated situation to succeed in fantasy football as a result of that. Enter Jeff Wilson, who is favored by over 2 touchdowns with the Dolphins in their matchup with the Houston Texans today. So White and Wilson will be 2 of the most popular plays at the position, and I do think you should consider playing both of them heavily this week. Now, the other massive favorite on this slate is the Kansas City Chiefs. They are favored by 16.5 points against the spiraling defending champion Los Angeles Rams. And with the Chiefs, we have a situation that has become a little more concentrated because Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on injured reserve and therefore will not be a factor here in Week 12. So that means we can reasonably expect Isaiah Pacheco to get all of the early down traditional running back carries in this offense and hopefully some work in the passing game. Now, Jerick McKinnon will obviously still operate as their primary 2-minute drill, hurry-up offense running back, but how much of that is really going to happen in a game that we expect the Chiefs to win by 3 scores? So this could be a very big game for Isaiah Pacheco. He is not projecting to be extremely popular on this slate, so that makes him kind of an interesting player to consider in high-risk contests specifically. Other big favorite on this slate, the San Francisco 49ers. So who else would we be interested in other than Christian McCaffrey, who has been the opportunity leader at the running back position in fantasy football for the better part of the last 3 years? Have seen that dip a little bit since he joined the 49ers. Eli Mitchell has played a little bit more since he's been activated, so that is something to keep an eye on in this backfield. I don't think McCaffrey is anything more than a high-risk consideration here at his high salary. You saw this the last couple of weeks. 17.5 fantasy points is not necessarily going to get it done at this price tag in daily fantasy football from Christian McCaffrey, but we know the type of player that he is. Other big favorite, the New York Jets are favored by 6.5 in their matchup with the Chicago Bears here in Week 12. So we want to consider Michael Carter at the running back position over James Robinson. He has played slightly ahead of Robinson in recent weeks. Obviously, the total touches are somewhat underwhelming. Just 10 opportunities last week. Before the bye, just 13 opportunities. When you look at what James Robinson has been doing for the Jets as well, 7 opportunities, actually had more opportunities the week before, 13. So somewhat of a split backfield. I do think Michael Carter is the better play if you are looking to play a Jets running back. But the emergence of these values, Wilson and White, I already talked about, has really eliminated any real reason to consider these guys in your lineups this week because we have running backs at similar prices that are going to see the vast majority of the touches in their backfields. Now, not massive favorites on this slate, but other running backs benefiting from role changes that need to be considered heavily in DFS in Week 12. One of my favorites is Latavius Murray with the Denver Broncos, just $5,000 here on DraftKings, extremely cheap over on FanDuel. He's on the favorite side of this game for the Broncos. No more Melvin Gordon III. He was released this week. Chase Edmonds was placed on injured reserve earlier this week. So it looks like Murray is going to lead the way for the Broncos in a matchup that they are favored against the Carolina Panthers with an offense that prefers to run the football. Seems like a really reasonable play here in all contest types at his low price tag. Other play that emerged, Samaje Perine. Perine will start for the Bengals because Joe Mixon is out this week with a concussion, and we saw Perine play his highest amount of snaps with the Bengals ever last week when Mixon exited the game. 70% of the snaps for the Bengals in Week 11. Field is expecting a little bit of the same here in Week 12, but there is one thing to be leery of with this Bengals backfield. They do have Chris Evans coming back this week. He was inactive last week, so there will be 3 running backs that could touch the ball for the Bengals in Week 12. Samaje Perine should get the vast majority of the touches for them, but we have Chris Evans and Travion Williams that will also be available on Sunday against the Titans. Perine's matchup with the Titans is by far the worst out of all these value running backs. The Titans are the number 1 rush defense in the NFL in 2022. Over on FanDuel, I have him plugged in as the 3rd running back because all 3 of these gentlemen here, Rachaad White, Latavius Murray, and Samaje Perine, are priced in the low to mid $6,000 range at the running back position, which is extremely affordable on FanDuel, and that allows you to do pretty much anything you want with the rest of your lineup over on FanDuel. So I do think this is the best default way to approach building a low-risk lineup, especially on FanDuel here in Week 12, is to focus on these 3 running backs, most especially Rachaad White, who is going to be the best value on this slate, in my opinion. Where else is the field going to go in low risk? At the quarterback position, if you look at our Occupy model, we have Tua Tagovailoa ranked number 1 for the Miami Dolphins. We have him catching a ton of ownership on DraftKings. Right behind him on DraftKings for ownership, we have Geno Smith with the Seattle Seahawks, who is still a value over there at just $6,000, and Patrick Mahomes, who is the best quarterback on the slate. So those are the 3 quarterbacks the field will be considering in low-risk contests over on DraftKings. I'm going to try to get Mahomes into my lineups personally this week. At the wide receiver position, given all the values that we've discussed at the running back position, it's going to be extremely easy to get up to some of the more expensive plays at the position. Tyreek Hill is probably the best of them, and that's why he is projected to be the highest owned wide receiver in the high dollar range, regardless of where you can play in Week 12. Keenan Allen, 8 targets last week on 30 Justin Herbert pass attempts, good for just under 27% share of the targets in the passing game, right back to his role as the go-to guy in this offense. No Mike Williams here in Week 12. Priced at just $6,100 on DraftKings, $7,300 on FanDuel. Going to be the most popular wide receiver on this slate in the highest total game for the favored offense. We want to play Keenan Allen in low-risk contests especially, but probably in high-risk contests as well. Garrett Wilson, the leading receiver for the Jets in terms of opportunity with air yards and targets, is just $4,300 on DraftKings and $6,000 on FanDuel, so he'll be the most popular value at the wide receiver position. So I do think these 2 guys probably make their way into your low-risk lineup, and then it's your choice of which path you want to go from there. I do like Tyreek Hill the best, so I would default to getting him in there. But it also looks like DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams at the high dollar amounts are going to be extremely popular this week. T. Higgins, if Jamar Chase misses again, would be intriguing at just $6,900 or $8,200 over on FanDuel. Terry McLaurin is up here as well at 18% specifically on DraftKings. And the reason Terry McLaurin is interesting against the Falcons this week is that he is on our underperforming wide receiver list for Week 12. Very short list this week, but it's Terry McLaurin, Matt Collins, and Van Jefferson, who are all underperforming their target and air yard roles at the wide receiver position here in Week 12. So that is something to consider when building all lineup types this week. These 3 would be good options in high-risk contests, especially in DFS. So Keenan Allen and Garrett Wilson are 2 of the wide receivers I think you probably want to start with based off of how the field is building this week. So Garrett Wilson down here at $4,300. Your choice of Tyreek Hill, who I think is my favorite low-risk wide receiver this week in his matchup with the Texans, just a pricey one at that. Probably the route I will go, but it wouldn't be a bad idea if you went with somebody like Devontae against the Seahawks or Hopkins against the Chargers, especially now that we expect Kyler Murray to return. Tight end position. We have a slate where we have each of Travis Kelce, who is by far the best play at the position the way he's being used right now, Mark Andrews, who has a ceiling that we're all well aware of, both on this slate, both projecting to be two of the most popular plays on this slate, but at least here on DraftKings, they are not the most popular plays. Foster Moreau with the Las Vegas Raiders is once again projecting as the most popular play at the tight end position because he's going to play virtually every snap and run virtually every route at the tight end position for the Raiders once again with Darren Waller on IR. One of the higher total games on the slate between the Raiders and the Seahawks. I think this is your low-risk tight end this week. You can get your exposure to Travis Kelce through Patrick Mahomes if you build this way. And speaking of the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, they are also going to be the most popular defense on this slate because they are favored by 16.5 points against a Los Angeles Rams offense that is going to be missing at least each of Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, and maybe Allen Robinson, maybe Tyler Higbee. Darrell Henderson was waived this week. This is a Rams team that seems to be extremely in flux, and the field is jumping all over this low $2,800 price tag on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, the Chiefs are coming in at a little lower ownership than they are on DraftKings. They're 25% on DraftKings right now in our model. This is by far going to be the most popular defense play of Week 12. Expensive on FanDuel here in Week 12, so I think that there's merit to considering other paths on the FanDuel slate. And our model has highlighted the Seahawks at $900 less as an option. When we look at what the field is going to do, they're going to be playing the Broncos at $3,900, the favored side of that game against the Carolina Panthers, or the Bengals at $3,600 against the Titans for a value defense. This is a good framework for a low-risk lineup. Again, I do like getting Tyreek Hill in here, and it is still possible to finish off your low-risk lineup with $5,400 per player remaining. But you can see that with his price tag, if you wanted to play a more expensive running back or wide receiver with your fourth spot, we prefer playing three running backs in low risk here. That's why people would come off Tyreek Hill. But with all the values that I discussed at the beginning of the video at the running back position, there are running backs you can play here to finish off your low risk lineup. And I do think that is the best way to play a Week 12 low risk contest specifically. Now in high risk, still like playing 3-1 stacks, still like doing that with offenses that pass the ball at an above average rate. And I do think my favorites this week are some of these giant favorites. Obviously, we'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs and their matchup with the Rams. When an offense is favored by as many points as the Chiefs are, we don't often see a player from the underdog side of the game get to the optimal lineup if that favored offense is right. So we don't have to use a Ram bring back in Chiefs builds here in Week 12. The other thing to keep in mind with the Chiefs is it is extremely possible that this is just a 2-0 stack. So I don't see any problem with playing just Mahomes and Travis Kelce as your two Chiefs weapons on offense. But if you are going to layer on a third, I do like Juju Smith-Schuster. Full practices all week after missing last week with a concussion, and he has been the clear number one option in the receiving game for the Chiefs. Given the values on the slate, there are ways to finish up your lineup here by going with the three highest upside, most popular weapons on the Chiefs. But the other guys to consider at a cheaper price, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a bit of a cardio king in this offense, but he's just $4,000 and does have the role. And then Justin Watson at the minimum price has started to play a lot more for Kansas City in recent weeks. So that is another option to consider here with Kansas City stacks. Same idea on the Dolphins side, with the Dolphins favored by 14.5 against the Texans. You can play Tua, you can play Tyreek Hill, and you can probably stop here because you also might have Jeff Wilson in your lineup like I do at this point. If you're going to layer on another Dolphin, I do like playing the tight end position correlating with my quarterback. Mike Gesicki is an option. And then obviously Jalen Waddle, as well as the second most popular target for Tua Tagovailoa, would be an option to consider also. Now, game stacks. There are a couple that meet our criteria this week. My favorite is actually the Chargers at the Arizona Cardinals. This is one of the late window games, one of the 4 late window games that we have. And we have both teams about as close to full strength as we can get. Now, on the Chargers side, they'll be missing Mike Williams at wide receiver. On the Arizona side, they'll be missing Rondale Moore and most likely Greg Dortch at wide receiver, but they will be getting Marquise Brown back from injured reserve, according to reports. So a lot of high upside weapons on both sides of the ball here in Week 12 in this game between two West Coast teams. The Chargers are my favorite side to stack because we have a value with Keenan Allen. We're expecting Gerald Everett to be back at tight end. We can obviously also consider Joshua Palmer at wide receiver, who has been targeted heavily with Allen and Williams each missing time for the Chargers. On the Arizona side, we have plenty of bring back options. The two best ones are a modestly priced James Conner at just $6,600 at the running back position, so we could consider that. Or DeAndre Hopkins at $7,700 at wide receiver. Probably still going to operate as the primary weapon for the Cardinals, even with Brown coming back from injured reserve. I think the best way to do this from a game theory standpoint, if you're stacking the Chargers passing game, is to bring back the Arizona running game and hope that Conner gets the majority of the opportunities and scores on the Arizona side. The passing game on the Arizona side fails a little bit, and now you have a really nice correlated 3-1 from that game in your lineup. You can round that out with some of the running backs that I talked about at the beginning of the video. Someone like Jeff Wilson in here to also take advantage of that opportunity in the matchup with the Texans. We've got Garrett Wilson at just $4,300, and now we have plenty of salary to finish off a high-risk lineup. This is a really, really fun-looking slate here in Week 12 because of the values that have been opened up by the running back injuries. Have fun with it. Check out the Daily Plug at OccupyFantasy.com. We posted that on Friday evening. It is available to read, and it goes through all of these things in much more detail than I can go through in a 15-minute video for you. We will also have some showdown videos for the Monday Night Football game and obviously all future weeks coming up for you, so we would appreciate it if you continue to watch those and engage with those. If you like our content, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. We have a ton of videos that are going out now for NBA and NFL, and you may not always get notified or see those in your video suggested videos queue from YouTube if you're not subscribed to the channel. So obviously, if you like the content, we would love to have you subscribe so you can make sure that you get those notifications. Good luck here in Week 12, and we'll be back next week to talk to you about Week 13 of the NFL season.